The next element of a successful event is we have to have audience obsession. This was kind of as I started to articulate this and see this. This is really, really catalytic. This element, I think, is where most people miss. Most people are kind of in that field of dreams, building it, hoping people come, and we're kind of missing the mark. We're missing the main thing that we're trying to do. And so this idea of audience obsession is everything is obsessively designed for those we seek to serve. I think that idea of those we seek to serve for me is really important too. I think a lot of what we do in organizations, even for-profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter. We're seeking to serve people. We're seeking to help people. We solve a problem. We help people tell themselves a story. We'll talk about that too, but it's an act of service when you're doing an event. It's an act of hospitality and kind of having this posture of service, of hospitality makes a really, really big difference, and you'll see it play out within the events that you're doing. I started in catering, and I remember my catering, my boss, she said, hospitality is taking care of people's needs before they realize they have them. And so, she would always say, hey, if we're having a donor meeting and there's, they set down the food in front of them and they're kind of looking around for salt and pepper or something like that, then their mind goes off the conversation and does that. They focus on the salt and pepper, and then you kind of lost some of that piece. So it's taking care of people's needs before they realize they have them. It's those little fingerprints or breadcrumbs throughout the event where you find like, oh, that was really purposeful. That was that really came together. When we think about audience obsession, one of the things that we need to define in advance is people buy things, donate to organizations that solve problems, right? So you buy something because it solves a problem. We want people to be transformed when the event is done. So people, when they start their event, they're at point A. When the event is done, we want them to be at point B. And defining that in advance is great. So I think this is where you can kind of look and say, hey, what is my audience's point A right now? Pre-event, what are some of the things that they're thinking, some of the things that they're feeling, some of the questions that they have? As I was developing this content and putting it together, as I've been developing this course, I think a lot about the point A, right? I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what I don't know, right? It's like there's this level of angst and anxiety that you have. And then I think about the point B, right? Like after this is done, what do I want you to feel? What do I want you to know? What do I want you to do? Right? I specifically listed it. We're going to talk about that next, but define point A. You can talk about a lot of different things. So this is, as you say, hey, we're going to dive into audience obsession. This is a great meeting that you can have with your planning team, with leadership. Who's our audience? Who is it for? And where are they now? And then where do we want them to go? Right? Like, and again, it does seem really, really simple, but we never plan an event and hope that someone stays the same. Right? But a lot of times in regards to the content, if you do, you have 500 people in the room and it's kind of this fundraising thing, you have to make the ask, right? Like the point B could be a donor, right? Someone who's aware, moving them to a donor, right? So kind of defining this in advance, and it's not super prescriptive either, right? There's lots of different options. We're not, people obviously have autonomy. We're not creating robots that just go this direction that we want them to go. But the better that we can kind of understand where someone's at And at the very, very human level, like, where is this person at emotionally, mentally? Like, what's on their mind? You do that as you're creating programming, as you're working with, a lot of people here are in kind of the nonprofit field. Like, that's, you think about it, right? If you're running an after school program, you're thinking, what is my student coming into this thing feeling when they show up for before school tutoring? What experience did they have at home? What was going on here? So better we can understand that, the better we can tailor what we're creating for them to fit where they are and where we want them to go. This is super helpful. I got this from Craig Groeschel. He pastor of Life Church. They created like the Bible app. He said that this is what he does for all of his sermons. It works great for events in regards to logistics, programming, just the overall piece. It's asking this question: when the event is done, what do I want my attendees to know? And then, so you can do this in a meeting with leadership or your team. You just say, hey, what do we want them to know when it's done? What do we want them to feel when it's done? How do we want them? Is it celebratory? Is it is it excited? Is it motivated? Is it convicted? Like, what's that feeling that we want to create? I wanted you all to feel empowered, right? When this is done. Like, oh, I can these things, I have a clear path that I can move forward. I like that. Like, this is good. And then right? We want action. We want movement. We want growth. We want change. We want transformation. That's what people buy, right? And that's what people are looking for as they interact with us. And so if it is a fundraising thing, we want them to give, right? We want them to stay in touch. We want them to sign up for the newsletter. If you have those really, really like firm things defined in advance, it allows you to create the content and the programming too. So a lot of times people kind of come to an event or a conference or with kind of a blank slate. What do we say if we do have a convening? What are we going to say from the stage? Well, what do we want them to know about our organization? What do we want them to feel? And when it's done, what do we want them to do? If you define those things, you can figure out how long you almost can take. If you have an existing event, something that's really helpful is if you think about these things as buckets. I've done this with a team where we came in, set up a conference room, and we just had a big Post-it on the wall. One said no, one said feel, one said do. And we started putting some of the programming pieces into, hey, we're having this Q&A time, or we're having this interaction time. That kind of falls into the feel. This one falls into the do. This one falls into the no. So you can also evaluate some current programming. If you're in the process of landing a plane, or this plane, it's one of those regular routes from Chicago to JFK or something like that. It's you can kind of be like, oh man, we're pretty do heavy, or pretty light on action after this is done. People have to know those clear steps, because it's if you confuse, you lose. Like, it's like Donald Miller says that all the time. Like, if you just hand people multiple, sign up for this, do this, everything, like, it gets really, really confusing. We're simple people, right? Like, our brains are constantly trying to save energy. And we can only take so much. And so you just say a few things and you repeat it often. That's why multiple times today I'm going to say you have what it takes to plan successful events, because you know this, and because you're coming at it from a very, very different perspective. People who have formal event training think about it often in the logistics and execution, right? Just kind of that bottom circle. They miss the top. This is a unique advantage that you have, that you can say, hey, it's not just this. Actually, I don't do tons of in-person events. I'm very picky and choosy with the clients that I do take. I will often say, hey, if you're looking for someone to execute your event, you'd be much more happy with someone else. I am not just a pure execution. I want to get into the weeds. Actually, it's better if I'm not executing the details, because I'm actually an event planner who does not like details. Like, I don't. To-do lists, they're the worst. Like, details, I can do it. I have systems, I have processes, but what I love is coming alongside organizations. That's my secret sauce. That's what I'm deeply passionate about. And so knowing that really, really helps you kind of drive your decisions and drive what you're doing. I came across this guy. So because I'm an accidental event planner, I didn't know what I didn't know. Didn't have formal training. So I did a lot of reading and a lot of podcasts, like a lot, like hundreds of books. And I think I'm 2,000, 2,500 podcasts deep. I would just binge full seasons. I'd find somebody. And so a lot of this stuff is, I've found that I really enjoy connecting dots, right? Not just collecting dots, not just kind of saying, hey, what's the, having that knowledge, but kind of connecting things. This idea of people like us do things like this came from this guy named Seth Godin. He's just awesome. Like this, he just has such an interesting perspective on marketing, what that looks like, and how you do that and how you engage people in a meaningful way. People want to connect to an identity, right? People want to connect to a tribe, right? If you can build this sense of us, people will be a lot more engaged. They'll be more excited. You want someone to say, oh yeah, that's me, right? That's why I keep on using the term accidental event planner, right? Like, that's what I am. Like, that's what a lot of people that are planning events, they're voluntold. Like, it's often even executive directors, board of directors, God love them. Like, they're accidental event planners, right? Like, so it's this, that's what we are together. And if we can do this for our audience, if we can kind of help them connect, if you're the type of person who cares about X, we'd love if you would come alongside us and do Y, right? If you're someone who thinks that we should not have 150, families sleeping outside of the police station because they're seeking asylum from Venezuela, like, we should do something about this. So if we can help people connect to a we, that's where we get incredibly effective results. It is connected to that identity. And what we see is actually people want to tell themselves a story, right? This idea or concept came from a book from Seth Godin that the name of the book is All Marketers Are Liars. But it's this idea that we buy products, we make decisions, we give to organizations, we do certain things because we want to tell ourselves a story. We want to tell ourselves personally, like at the human level, a cohesive story. I am the type of person who does X, right? I am a marathon runner. I like Apple products rather than Samsung, right? So we make buying decisions because it connects to something that we believe about ourselves, and we want to tell ourselves even more so that this is true of us. And so this is super catalytic. If we can help people tell themselves that story, it's huge. And I think when we're thinking about our audience and who we're trying to engage, who we can be best at engaging, this idea of we want to find people who already believe what we believe and help them tell themselves a story. So it's really hard to convince people of things that they don't believe yet. So when we're dealing in the currency of time, of attention, of donations, of I could go to this event or do this thing, I could support this organization, I could support this one. We want to find people who already believe what we believe, or kind of come alongside them with, you know what? People like you also might be interested in this. If you're the type of person who cares about solving the problem of homelessness, you might be interested in this opportunity that we have with this shelter, right? So you take that thing, that identity that's already exists, and you help them kind of understand how what you do, what you're offering, is going to help them tell themselves even a deeper story for that. So you're not going to get someone to come off the street and be like, okay, yes, I'm going to care deeply about this. I'm going to spend 3 hours at this event, and when they didn't know anything about it. So we have to understand where people are coming into it, what they already believe, and help them to go deeper into that. So for a while, I was targeted on Facebook with ads for shoes. They're like, hey, you should buy these $300 shoes. Like I'm terrible with shoes. Like any good shoes I have, they came from my sister-in-law or my wife. Like I wear a pair of shoes until they're destroyed. Like just recently, the last like 2 years, as a grown adult, I was like, my feet aren't growing anymore. Like if I find a pair of running shoes that I like, that like fits well with my weird gait, like I can buy 2 pairs. So it's this thing, but I'm not that target person, right? Like I'm not that person that says, you'd first have to convince me that I should care about my shoes. Then you need to convince me that I should spend $300 to buy your specific shoes. People don't make 2 decisions, not quickly, right? And especially when it comes to large amounts of money, time, effort, attention. And so I think this idea, a lot of times we'll market to people who aren't warm, who this isn't even part of their identity yet. I work with a classical school in Oak Park, the field school, and you have to find people who already care about that. Like I went to one of their events, and they're like, hey, it's an interesting thing. I went because a friend invited me, and we gave like $50 or something like that. But I didn't even know what a classical school was when I was at the fundraiser. So I didn't kind of become a long-term donor supporter of that process because it wasn't part of my identity. But there was enough to kind of get me in the room, and I opted out. But there's other things where I have been like, oh yeah, I care about this. Like I interact a lot with New Life Centers, with Running Forward, because these are nonprofits in our organization programs that I care a lot about. And it's my neighborhood. It's part of my identity. I have a lot of pride in living in Little Village or Lawndale, and want to see the neighborhood continue to grow and get invested in. So find people who already believe what you believe and help them tell themselves a story. It might feel manipulative, but it's not, right? So I think what people need to realize in some cases, especially when it comes to nonprofits, is they're not selling the impact that they make, the people that they help, or the good that they do in the world, right? They're selling the story your donor will tell themselves because they're the kind of person who gives or cares enough to give or do this specific thing. The more we can pour into the identity, and if we have a good product, like if you're selling snake oil or you're selling diet pills that don't work, or you're selling these things that aren't going to help someone, that is manipulative, right? But like when you have something good, that's the thing. There's a couple of my services that I help clients with where it's like people will actually make money from working with me. I'm a travel agent, and when I book a lot of hotel rooms, I receive a commission from the hotel, and I share that with my client. And so a lot of times if there's enough hotel rooms, someone would have the opportunity to, I've had organizations make $2,000-$3,000 from hiring me to do it. And so it's that story that people tell themselves. And I think that's the more we can kind of connect into that, the more we can kind of say, hey, like this is what you should care about. This is what you already care about. Let's think about it even more. Any questions on kind of the story you tell yourself? Because I think it's for me, it was this. I had to wrestle with it back and forth, and I think I have the quote later. But Zig Ziglar said, "To sell is to serve," and I think that's what this is this idea that we're serving people by helping them tell themselves a story. But any questions or pushback? I know sometimes people, it feels a little funky sometimes. You are making an impact as a nonprofit. You're selling some of these programs that do things. I think it's a lot of times it's connecting. It's this idea, just like you were saying with your audience, we want our donors, we want our attendees, and we want the people in our programs to be the hero, right? A lot of organizations will position themselves as the hero of the story, right? They are Luke Skywalker, and as an organization, we should be Yoda, right? We should be that trusted advisor. And so when we're thinking about the story, a way that you can talk about this, say you're at a gala and you're like, hey, we did this many people, we impacted this many students, and that is true and that is good. But you can say, because people like you cared enough to show up, enough to be monthly donors, enough to give your time and attention, we collectively, you all as the hero, us as kind of that mechanism or conduit, were able to achieve this impact. Thank you so much. Like we could not do this without you. Like you get to give $50 and you get to see all of this impact come further down the road. So this is really important, but when you're phrasing it in regards to nonprofits, fundraising, it's you kind of saying and connecting it for them because you're the type of person who does this. So yeah, anytime we can connect to people's identity it's huge. So this is another kind of really catalytic thing that I came across. Again, I didn't have any background in marketing or anything like that. Just kind of discovered it through myself. Our audience will work through and will go through a funnel, right? So there's this process where they often say organizations, events, marketing materials, advertisements, a lot of times people are asking for the sale far too early in the process, right? It's like going on a first date and asking that person to marry you. That's what a lot of organizations will do. If somebody asks you to marry them on a first date, you should definitely say no, because that person is crazy, right? And if you say yes, you are crazy. So like this idea, a lot of times we'll say, I've had someone that was hosting a nonprofit in Chicago, was hosting an event at the Hyatt Regency. They were going to serve a nice chicken dinner and they were going to talk about themselves for 90 minutes. And they're like, we're advertising on Facebook, because who wouldn't want to go to something like this? I was like, nobody wants to go to something like this. I was like, have you ever bought anything? Have you ever gotten advertised on Facebook to go to a dinner for an organization you didn't know, to go eat bad chicken and listen to them talk about themselves? Like, is that a buying decision you've ever made? He's like, no, but like, I think people would be interested. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. We need to have an awareness of where people are in the funnel. And this is kind of the way that it works. I did kind of my own drawing, and it kind of got a little funky, but people first have to become aware of your product, aware of your organization. They have to know you exist, right? This is the first step that people need to get through into the problem. So this idea of, I mentioned specifically the 150 people living at the police station. Being aware of that is that first step. I didn't even know What's going on? What led to that happening? So there's awareness. Then, hey, New Life Centers is working with these refugees to find housing, to find places for them to go. People are bringing food. Okay. Is that something that you'd ever be interested in? Are you the type of person that can you cook, or can you pick up catering or drop off meals? It kind of gets into this next step of interest, right? So you see a product, you all went through this funnel in some cases with attending this event. You were made aware of it. That sounds interesting. Maybe it was a push from a boss, maybe a kind of a nudge from a friend. Maybe you were voluntold to come. But you showed some interest, and then you interacted, right? You probably clicked on the button, looked at the thing, possibly went to my website. You kind of showed some interest. There was kind of this process of nurturing, kind of saying okay, nurture or consideration. And then it goes to action or purchase, right? So this is the process that we all go through for all of the things that we buy, for all of the organizations we interact with. And we need to make sure that we're marketing to people where they actually are. So don't ask for the sale. Don't ask for the marriage on the first date. But that's what a lot of people do. And so as you're looking at your audience, you can say, hey, tonight we do have 3 ways for you to get involved. If you've been a donor before, if you've done this, we're looking for 5 partners to partner at this level and do this. If you're just here because you like so-and-so and they invited you, we would love to send you this email that gives a little bit more explanation on what we're doing. Or, hey, come to our school and do a tour. You just got to experience it for yourself. You got to walk the hallways. If you do it, if you do that, you're gonna be interested. That's kind of that interest, that's that attraction, and know how big the ask is, right? How big is this action? Because I did this so last minute, I made it inexpensive, made this event inexpensive, right? Know how big the ask is, know how big the time ask is. It's not just money, it's time, resources, attention. So understanding where people are in your funnel, and there's going to be more people up top. A lot of people kind of hang out in this area and then eventually will purchase. They say a lot of times people have to be told something 7 times before they'll buy. That applies to giving, right? Or interacting with an organization. One thing that's really interesting, though, that I think a lot of organizations do is after people kind of interact, they attend the gala, a lot of times they just sit, right? They fall through the funnel and then they just kind of fall into this pool of email lists, right? Or donors, or people will engage, or people will invite next year to the gala, right? I see that most often. People are they just hear from this nonprofit every single time they're holding their Hyatt Regency dry chicken dinner event. It's there's no nurturing happening. There's no movement in any pool of water, any group of people, any email list that is not engaged grows stagnant. We have to keep them moving. We have to keep them progressing in a process. And so we have to have a plan in advance to make that happen. And so what we kind of want to do is we came up with this idea of when you have an engaged audience, they fall into this pool, right? So say a lot of you are probably here because something that you're doing is part of a customer's journey, right? So 50-year anniversary, we want to build up our donor base. We want to engage our alumni, community outreach event. We want to serve the community. We'd love to have 1,500 people that get to know about, hey, we offer these resources and help these people this way. So there's ways that people will get into this. Hey, come to our fall bash, right? Our fall event. They could find out by a flyer. We could put this thing, you could advertise on Facebook with a demographic because it's a free event, right? In their neighborhood. Like there's things that we know about these people. So we can send, we have to have a plan and kind of multiple streams that people will come into. Honestly, full transparency, this event is part of a stream. You all kind of came to this event through different things. You're going to leave the event changed, hopefully, right? And having knowledge and hope. You're an engaged audience. At the end, I'm going to show a slide that shows other ways that people interact with me, other people who are planning events. These are things that they can do. To sell is to serve. In that sense, it's like, hey, if you don't have, I don't need the shoes, right? I don't need $300 shoes. Like, so no harm, no foul, right? That's kind of that piece. But I do have a plan, right? I don't want you all just to stop here, because this could be part of what, maybe the stakes are really high for the thing that you're planning. Maybe you need this next step, and this could help you. Hey, I want to be the type of person that can plan a successful event. So know where people are going to go afterwards, kind of create these additional funnel streams and processes. This could, if you have a grandparent that comes to your event, you'd send them down a potential, hey, you could become a donor or a prayer supporter. You could do this, or you could be an advocate, or come in and read, or, there's lots of different ways that we can kind of send people. We want to keep them moving through the process. Marketing is and can be an act of generosity. This is that quote from Zig Ziglar: to sell is to serve, right? That's, I do believe that deeply, because, and it was a big process, because it's weird to ask for money. Like, as an organization, as a business, if you're selling a product, we always undervalue our products. Isaac, my brother here, sells a product. It's an awesome product, and he's selling it for too cheap. Calling you out. But that's what we do all the time with our things. We undervalue, in some cases, the story that people can tell themselves by interacting with this organization. Like, and I think that's what's really, really cool. And so this is a slide with a lot of stuff on it. You can take a picture if you want. It's really just kind of the summary of all the different questions that we asked through the different audience obsession pieces. This is what's going to be in that PDF that I'll send you. You can take kind of the big questions. What are our 1, 3, 5-year goals? What's our organization's why? What do we believe? You can take those things. You can really do all of this in about a 45 to 60 minute meeting, put it on paper, and refer back to it. That's what builds a great foundation for an event. So if you have these things answered and you know how it connects to your organization, you are literally 80% of the way done. Like it's that big. Because what happens is, if you aren't clear on who it's for, you might try something, you move down into logistics and execution, and then it fails. And then you have to go back to the drawing board, do it again, do a different thing. So there's lots of, we do double, triple, quadruple work when it comes to events. When we get into the execution piece, if we can firm this up, it's absolutely amazing. And I see it time and time again where people miss it. Like, there was an event organization that I worked with spent $4.5 million to honor their salespeople, right? It was to celebrate their top earners. These people brought in 80% of these 20% of salespeople brought in 80% of the organization's revenue. The 80-20 rule applies to clients, to donors as well. 80% of your money comes from 20% of your people, right? So they paid all of this money to get these people there. These are people making high 6 figures. Honestly, they're kind of like a bunch of jerks. And they had them share rooms. And so these it's, primarily men in this organization, and these people are sharing a room at the event that they're being celebrated. And this is all year on the company's dime. Every other time they travel, they're staying at the Ritz, the Four Seasons, and they're in a single room. but we're celebrating you and your sales excellence, and we're putting you in a shared room. They're like, oh, we just don't have the budget for it. It's like audience obsession, right? Like, what do we want to do? Like, think that piece through. What's being communicated by this action? It should have been a no-brainer. It was something that got brought up every single year. I was just executing the details. But it's like, if you had this, I bet you these salespeople would sell even more, right? It's $1 million decision, and yes, that's a lot of money, and no, I don't have that much. But you do, and you could, and they're gonna sell $1 million more. Like, it's going to happen. 3 of them are gonna leave because they shared a room. Like, those people, that's $1 million of sales. Not a math major, but it's big. So any questions on kind of this idea of audience obsession? I spent a disproportionate amount of time on this because I think it's one of the most crucial pieces and one of the biggest catalysts that if we get this right, most everything else will fall into place. And it really helps you make decisions. What table clause do we do? Well, do these people like yellow? Like, what should we do, this programming or this programming? Should we have this speaker or this speaker? Like, the rest of it flows from deeply understanding an audience obsession and having that posture of everything being obsessively designed for those we seek to serve. It's just that piece that changes everything.